morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Let's talk about Niger, the coup in Niger, its front page. Yesterday we saw a special emissary, according to the newspapers late in the day, that the former Emir of Kano and other eminent people had actually gone on a mission to Niger and had met with the coup plotters. Okay, as of this morning, again, according to the newspapers, we suddenly see that, well, something has changed in Niger, and now they've actually imposed a new government. They have actually appointed someone. We're still trying to get used to this name. They now have a prime minister, and the prime minister is Mr. Ali Mahaman Lamine Zaine. He'll be leading a 21-member government, and we are told, according to the news, that the military will retain defense and internal affairs. I think that's something like the Interior Ministry to us. Okay, so this is where the narration of the situation in Niger has got to. It wasn't quite there when we went to bed last night. And our guest this morning, first of all, Mr. Ahmad Sajo. He's the former Commissioner for Information in Adamawa State. A fine morning to you, sir.
A fine morning to you, sir. Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And Mr. Femi Odere. Mr. Odere is a journalist and is a political affairs analyst as well. Again, Femi, a fine morning to you.
A fine morning to you. Good morning, Yori. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Let me start with Mr. Sajo. Both gentlemen, by the way, one is happy to say they're reaching us from the Abuja studio. You might not have known the difference, but I just felt I'd chip that in. So, Mr. Sajo, give me your impressions, please, on where we are at now. We were going to look at, this coup, is it going to be diplomacy or war? But the admixture of the circumstances and the situation was different last night from what it is this morning. So what would you say? Is it going to be diplomacy or war? Mr. Sajo?
I totally understand the situation. We have a duty as a people to always protect and promote constitutional order in any country, especially our neighbor as strategic as Niger. But I also understand that, war with Niger at this point in time, either a direct war between us and Niger or a proxy war, having the Western powers and Russia also coming into fray, will not be in the strategic interest of any of our peoples. And so I think we need to look at the map of Niger. You can see Niger has borders with Algeria, with Libya, with Chad, with Nigeria, with Benin Republic, with Burkina Faso, and with Mali. And of all these countries, from the statement issued by the Algerians, there's a likelihood that they will oppose any armed conflict in Niger. Mali and Burkina Faso had already said they would join on the side of Niger. And that makes it a bit difficult, and nobody knows where Chad stands in this matter. The president of Chad was in Niger, but nobody knows where he stands on this matter. So we may decide to go into war and realize that we are, fighting ourselves as Africans. And I think the strategic interest of Nigeria as a country is to promote Pan-Africanism. And so anything that can bring consensus within the African continent between restoring constitutional order and also, protecting our strategic interests as individual countries, I think we should do it. I know that the president of the country is the leader of ECOWAS. He is bound to promote whatever resolutions are taken by ECOWAS, but he should also understand that he is the commander-in-chief of our own Nigerian armed forces, that whatever he can do to avoid bloodshed is the best he can do for our people. We should also look at the strategic interests of Nigerian people, especially those that are bordering Niger, and even the Nigerian people themselves. and make sure that we exhaust all avenues of diplomacy. And even if we have to go into armed conflict, it has to be an inevitable situation, and I don't think an inevitable situation ever existed in this kind of case. We can still resolve this impasse through diplomacy, and we should aim to do it through diplomacy. We should aim to understand that our strategic interests as a people, our own armed conflict internally here had relied tremendously on Niger. We have a lot of IDPs from Nigeria in Niger, or they are refugees in this case. We have a lot of, Niger had not allowed both the bandits and the insurgents in the northeast and the bandits in the northwest to have safe haven in their country. These are all issues that we should look at as our own strategic interest before we take any decision to go into armed conflict with Niger.
Indeed. Thank you very much, sir. So, as you say, Niger is an ally, and that we have to, be very cognizant of as we move forward. It's just that there's a set of unfortunate circumstances. And Mr. Femi Odire, as you know, the body, ECOWAS, has a zero appetite for coups, as was stated, interestingly enough, even though he couldn't have known anything about it at the time, when President Tinubu, as chair, when he assumed the chairmanship of ECOWAS, he was speaking about coups and how Africa had to rally together and say no to coup, no to unconstitutional governments. And then, lo and behold, we have what we have. Now, the situation happened in Niger. I think there's a sort of a mistaken commentary that has started to be corrected in the past couple of days, I think, and that is that something about Nigeria. It's not Nigeria, it's ECOWAS. But people, because the chairman is our president, you have heard some commentary going along the lines of Tinubu this and Tinubu that. It's a joint ECOWAS thing. Now, I want to ask you, Femi, what do you think of the state of affairs now? Because whatever it might have been yesterday morning, for example, in your mind, I'm sure the dynamics have changed now that there's a prime minister, Ali Lamine Zaine. He's now been appointed. What do you think? How does this affect the ground now?
Well, thanks, Yori. You see, since the Niger coup happened about probably 16 days ago, it has actually thrown up a lot of controversies that, unfortunately, the media is not really talking about. And the way I look at it, I have about probably 5 to 6 components of this controversy. But unfortunately, only one of these 5 to 6 components is being discussed, and for some very unfortunate, if not ulterior motive. And one, if I have to summarize the 5 or 6 components, I would say the first one that is being talked about, unfortunately, is what I describe as trying to give a dog a bad name in order to hang it. And the second component of this is what I see as the role of the Senate in this whole controversy. And nobody has really, talked about it. And the third, it seems to me, has actually thrown up the question as to who is truly a Nigerian. Because we've been hearing all these opinion, motives, and all of that. And it begins to give the impression that we actually have 2 countries. And that's why I said this component actually can be described as who is truly a Nigerian. And the fourth one is the role of democracy in all of this. And then the fifth one, to me, is the world that is now beginning to be a multipolar world. Remember, we used to have a unipolar world in terms of the United States and the former Soviet Union actually holding sway in the rest of the country. And then from there, it became a bipolar is what I mean in terms of the United States and Russia. Then it became a unipolar world where the United States was the only dominant power with the rest of the world. And now we have a multipolar world where we have different power centers coming into play. France is in the mix, India is in the mix, China is in the mix. And of course, the sixth one is what I see as the soldiers of fortune, and these private armies who are actually making incursions into the African continent. To me, these are what we ought to be talking about. And if you want me to expatiate on all of these 5 or different components, the first one, as you rightly pointed out, is that people have actually done a very disservice to the president of Nigeria, and that is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, by saying that he is the one who wants to go to war. He's not the one who wants to go to war.
I beg your pardon. I got to interrupt you for a moment. Thank you very much. So sorry about that. Stay with us, please. I'll take a quick break. We'll be right back to continue with this conversation. Okay, welcome back, and our guests are still with us. Ahmad Sajo, former Commissioner for Information in Adamawa State, and Femi Odere, journalist and political affairs analyst. Let me come back to you, Ahmad. First of all, we know that they have very little appetite, that is to say our brothers from Niger, they have very little appetite for all the peace overtures that have been going. I don't know if that is as a result of some misunderstanding. We've been sending emissaries to them. Now, General Abdurrahmani Tijani, I don't know what you think. First of all, we wanted them out of there. All of the continent wanted them out of there because you can't overthrow, a legitimately elected government. That is the narrative of ECOWAS, and they really don't want to compromise on that. But now that it's gone as far as it has gone, not only were they not, the most welcoming to all our emissaries, with the possible exception of the former emir of Kano yesterday, as we saw them, he seemed to have met with Chiani. What do you think now? Now that they've said, okay, there's a civilian in charge now. In fact, we, the army, we've taken ourselves out of it, apart from the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of the Interior. Does that complicate matters? Because also, before you go, sir, I wanted to also remember that it does look as if the ordinary citizens in Niger, well, I don't know how to put it delicately, they seem to be pro the change.
Okay, let's look at it very dispassionately. Every country, every system, a governance system, looks at its own strategic interests and plots its responses to situations according to its strategic interests. At this point in time, what the military junta in Niger is trying to avoid is excessive pressure from the diplomatic community. And that is why all formal diplomatic missions have been denied entry. But you can see that the former emir of Kano, the 14th emir of Kano, I beg your pardon, went there and was received. And I want you to look at the optics very well. The military ruler was very, very strategic. Behind him are two flags, the Nigerian flag and the ECOWAS flag. He's trying to tell you that they're still members of ECOWAS. They still accept membership of ECOWAS, but that the resolution of ECOWAS is what they don't accept. That is a very strategic move he has made to show the world that he still believes in ECOWAS, whatever ECOWAS says. But
he won't be dictated to
what ECOWAS is telling him.
Yeah.
Hello.
He sees the ECOWAS position as dictating to Niger, and he seems to have the position that we won't be dictated to.
Even though we accept that we are members of ECOWAS. But I just want you to also understand that not all the countries that are bordering Niger are members of ECOWAS. Chad is not, Libya is not, Algeria is not. And of the countries that are bordering them that are within ECOWAS, Mali and Burkina Faso are already under military rule. And they have pledged to support them in case there's an armed conflict. So this complicates the whole situation. And they are also digging in. They are digging in by establishing a government, but there are issues beyond the issues. Like my brother here said, we're reducing it to Nigerian government or the president of Nigeria trying to invade Niger. That is not the situation. The situation is that ECOWAS does not want to brook any more coup d'etat within their sub-regional grouping. And they want to use the Niger coup as a means of sending the message that we would not accept any more military incursion in the governance of any member state of ECOWAS, and that we want constitutional order and democracy protected within the regional subgrouping. This is the position of ECOWAS. But what I am saying is that each ECOWAS country will also, at the end of the day, have to sit down and look at their own strategic interests. It's not possible for Burkina Faso and Mali, that are governed by military rulers, to say they don't support a coup d'etat in Niger. That is totally unexpected. You should know this. So what we are saying is that each country, Nigeria should also look at her own strategic interests in trying to configure how to enforce ECOWAS decisions. Because at the end of the day, everybody will end up answering his father's name. Every country will be affected as a country. There is nothing like we will be affected as an ECOWAS sub-region. Every country that makes contributions will have to bear the consequences of the contributions it has made in this kind of situation. So we have to look at our own Nigerian strategic interests. We have to look at the overall interests of ECOWAS within the context of the situation on ground, within the context of the realities on ground, what the boundaries that are there, who are the people, what are the deployments that are going to be done if we are going to go into deployment. I think it will be much safer if we go via diplomacy. Via diplomacy, we will eventually overcome this impasse, and we should avoid anything that involves foreign powers trying to impose their will either way, whether it is the West trying to impose their will, or whether it is Russia and the mercenaries that are working
Wagner Group,
Russia that are trying to impose their will. We must avoid that. We should not support that. It's not in our interest as Africans. It's not in our interest as ECOWAS members. It's not our interest as Nigerians.
Indeed. Femi, you were also expanding the conversation sort of beyond the very, very important points that has just been made by Ahmad about our own strategic interests, going into external factors that could very much play here. It was, I think, this week or maybe late last week that the Secretary of State in the U.S. was actually warning that in his opinion, in their opinion in America, the Wagner Group was actually seeking to take advantage of this situation. Yeah, we know the closeness of Wagner Group to Russia. We know that Russia is looking for influence. Then there's France, there's the UK, there's the US. All of these people, let the truth be told, it doesn't matter what they say. They have their eyes on the uranium of Niger. That is the wisdom a lot of people are holding. And so actually that is affecting how people are responding to some of the things that are coming out of there. But how serious, for instance, we hear that the Wagner Group has been, they've sent 1,500, what should I call them? Mercenaries. I was going to say soldiers, but, just for the sake of delineation, mercenaries. They didn't say exactly where in Africa they've been directed to go, but surely this is another overarching concern, because they have their interest, and it is not their interest for us to make peace among ourselves in West Africa and continue with our lives. So that's part of the complication, isn't it, Femi, or do you see it differently?
It is obviously a part of the conversation, and the conversation must be expanded, and it should be expanded. Because we shouldn't even be talking about whether or not President Tinubu wants to go into war at this point in time. Because to me, that matter has already been settled. Why has it been settled? Because the president went to the Senate by virtue of being the chairman of the heads of ECOWAS, by virtue of the ECOWAS protocol. So the president did the right thing, having gone to the Senate for that. And the Senate said, Mr. President, we love you and we are going to cooperate with you in any way, shape, or form. But in this matter, we are respectfully disagreeing with you. Please go and find a political and diplomatic solution to this imbroglio. To me, that matter should have been settled. And the matter was actually settled because if we listen, and because we are not really listening very carefully as a nation, the president already said we are not going to be holding anybody's underwear. To me, that was a very poignant statement. And that means that whatever is going to happen in Niger Republic by this coup is going to be determined by the African continent, most especially the 15 or odd numbers of ECOWAS country. And that's one. And the media should have advanced the conversation rather than being in this merry-go-round, going in a circle, kind of, it is President Tinubu who wants to go to war and all of that. And that has always been the unfortunate sing-song from all the from all the opinion molders that the media has been talking with. So, to me, the role of the Senate, too, is very significant, and has been very significant because, why? Time was when people were saying that the Senate is going to be a rubber stamp. It is now evident that the Senate is not a rubber stamp. The Senate has actually, by this advice to the president, asserted their independence through the leadership of the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio. So that is one component, and the matter actually ought to have been read by the media there. And then we move to the next conversation. And the next conversation here, it seems to me, is that who is actually truly a Nigerian? And why do I say that? You've been hearing conversation back and forth that Nigerians have relations, they have relations in the Niger Republic and all of that. And you heard when a former ambassador actually said that there were Nigerians who actually were ambassadors of Nigeria. I don't know if you got that message. To me, that was appalling. How could somebody or a group of people who still retain the citizenship of the Niger Republic becoming the ambassadors of Nigeria? So to me, that is one component of the conversation that the media should have
I beg your pardon,
picked up on. But unfortunately, the media is not talking about that.
We have had these very, very close ties. In fact, as you are saying, and as is well known, quite frankly, it flows into and out of each other, the closeness between us and Niger. I'm going to come back to that point, but in the meantime, I've got to go on a quick break. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our guests are Ahmed Sadio and Femi Odere, and we're looking at the Niger coup, diplomacy or war. And, our people are looking into it. But in the meantime, Reverend Dominic has come on the line. Good morning to you, Reverend. Oh, well, I thought Reverend Dominic was there, but clearly not.
Yes, I'm here. Hello, can I come in? Hello?
Reverend, I don't greet you since now. Good morning, sir.
I'll be greeting you. Good morning, Jerry. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Please, I have a question to ask.
Sure.
Why is it when there was a queue in Mali? Can you hear me? That is a feedback. Can I go on?
Yes. Why is there a what?
Why is that when there was queue in Mali and Burkina Faso?
Okay.
The response we are getting now from ECOWAS was maybe silent than what it's supposed to be. When there was queue in Mali, and Burkina Faso, why is the response of ECOWAS is different than what we are having when it's in Niger Republic, when it's in a backyard one, and it's the time our own president is the head of ECOWAS? Knowing the strategic importance of Niger Republic to us, as we are fighting these insurgents, Burkina Faso is to us a buffer zone. You know there's this interest of ISIS there, and the Boko Haram is somewhere at backyard there. If we go to push this thing further, the Niger Republic nation will not look at it as ECOWAS. They will look at it as Nigeria fighting them. Of course, Nigeria is the giant here. If ECOWAS will spend 10 naira in this war, Nigeria will spend 9 naira, both the military and anyhow. So what I'm trying to say, thank God for Mr. President is a listening president. They have listened to the Senate. We're not going to war. The way they have closed the eyes in Mali and Burkina Faso, let that issue also be in the Niger Republic. And number two, Yore, what causes coup is bad governance. If you look at all these nations we're mentioning, there's a unit in Niger Republic. There is no nuclear power. We supply the power. There's crude oil in Nigeria. There's no refinery. We're refining outside. There's gold in Mali. It is mined outside. If you look at the signature of this issue, it's the same, bad governance. As long as the bad governance in this area, people will come in to upturn governance, democracy. The best form of government is democracy, no matter how bad it is. But as long as human beings are the ones feeling the brunt of it, there are people who is dancing in Niger. Most of them did not pass from a seat. What they need good governance, and how it can come, they don't mind, whether it's democracy or military. So my advice as a pastor, that President Tinubu should see how to make Nigeria governable, so we can be the giant of Africa with good governance. Because what?
Okay. Well, so thank you very much for calling in, Reverend. Ahmad, let me come to you because talking about the options of, you've already said, and I think it is generally believed that no African really wants war. No West African, no African really wants war. But there are rules, there are principles, and there is the concern that if the authorities trying to remember the general's name, General Abdurrahmani Chiani, if he were to get his way, clearly everybody is worried that that might send a signal to other people. Zero tolerance is zero tolerance. It can't be 2% tolerance. And but I wanted to sort of wind this question onto the northern part of Nigeria and comments that have already been made about our closeness to Niger. Did I say Nigeria? I wanted to say Niger. Our closeness to Niger. And all of the 7 states bordering Niger, 7 northern states bordering Niger, none of them has an appetite for this kind of thing. It's good that Femi Odire was saying that neither is the president and the Senate of the National Assembly. But just looking at the attitude of the 7 states, that are bordering Niger, that have family in Niger, Nigerians also have family in Nigeria. This is really a quandary for us, because it's really like this is between brothers, members of the same family in part.
No, I think let us look at these issues very dispassionately. First and foremost, I think ECOWAS did not make any mistake in selecting our president as the leader of the authority of the heads of state. This is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a man that is known to have defended democracy in his own country, a man that has put his life on the line for democracy. So I believe that in selecting him to lead the authority of heads of state, they knew that inherently he will have zero tolerance to any means of constitutional leadership other than democratic constitutional leadership. We commend him for making that very clear and for standing by that all along.
So that you could continue from that point of zero tolerance for any extra constitutional leadership, because Ada in Jos has been waiting. I'll be right back to you, so please forgive me for the interruption, Ahmed. Ada, good morning. You mean all of that was for nothing? I'm so sorry. Please continue. The call dropped. Please continue.
Okay, let me tell you that the Berlin conference that just decided on boundaries for Africa did not consider a lot of things, because of course they were not here. They didn't even know what was happening. Naturally, in all the borders, there are people who belong to families on both sides. I remember very well that when Boko Haram overran my hometown, we had to run to our families that were living in Cameroon to find refuge. That is not out of question. And I also told you that in the Northeast, when we had this insurgency displacing people, some of them had to find refuge in Niger. And in the Northwest, when the bandits became very notorious, some of our people also had to run and find refuge in Niger. That you cannot remove from the equation. But I think it is pedestrian to begin to change the conversation within the context of our often, looking at issues from our fault lines of region, religion, and ethnicity. I think it's not a regional matter. It's not a matter that, puts people into beginning to decide whether they pay allegiance to Niger or to Nigeria. What we are saying is that our strategic interest as a country, the strategic interest of our people living within the borders of Nigeria and Niger in those 7 states should be taken into consideration in whatever decision we take with respect to restoring constitutional order in Niger. That is not
okay. At this stage, let me bring in Ada, who has now come back. Nigeria. I beg your pardon. At this stage, let me bring Ada, who has actually kindly got back in. Good morning to you, Ada. No, I mean, you got to be kidding me. Just as I was putting Ada on, we lost her again. Well, okay, we're going to continue the conversation in here. So sorry about that, Ada. Twice you tried, and for some reason, it didn't quite work out. I don't know. Okay, if you do call in a third time, Ada, I'll be obliged to interrupt whatever is going on and give you your say. Femi, just as was being said there, you have also said that, look, there might have been a misunderstanding. Okay, Ada has come in.
Hello.
Third time lucky.
Hello.
Third time lucky. Good morning to you, Ada.
Yuri, good morning. It's Ada calling from Jos Plateau State. Good morning to your guest.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
The main fact that the people gave a listening ear to Emir Sanusi, that will show you that their problem is the way ECOWAS behaved,
Well, he's now Khalifa Sanusi. Khalifa Sanusi, the 14th Emir of Kano.
Yes, Emir of Kano, that's what I'm saying now. But the main fact that the cookies gave him a listening ear, that means that they were not happy with the way ECOWAS went about it. ECOWAS was really in a hurry. Even the sanction is both ways. Even Nigerians say they are feeling the heat. Now look at the trucks all trapped over there, you know. So what I'm trying to say here is that I thank the Senate for, taking that position of not, advising Mr. President, our president, who is the chairman of the ECOWAS, appropriately. So I don't think war should not even be any option at all. We shouldn't allow these Western countries to come in, So all I'm trying to say here is that we should take a lesson from what is happening.
Okay.
The important thing, the bottom line is that there should be good governance, So what is happening there can happen anywhere. So we're not praying for it here, but let there be good governance. All the time, let's not do it of Nigeria. Okay, shall get better.
Thank you very much, Ada, and also thank you for your persistence till you finally got in. Femi, back to you then. Governance, as Ada has been saying, is at the foot of everything. People want good governance, and they must have decided in their own way that that is not what they were getting, and so they've gone this way, they have gone. But it must be constitutional, and this is not constitutional, is part of the problem that we're facing. Now, the fact that they've already appointed, the picture I saw of him this morning, talking about the prime minister, as he's been named, Ali Mahaman Lamine Zaine, he was wearing a suit, so I'm just going to be assuming he's a civilian. All the other active coupists, they were in uniform. Now that we have that, and I think ECOWAS' position, the position of ECOWAS was that there should be a reinstatement of Mr. Mohamed Bazoum as the duly elected, leader in Niger. And I also brought up the matter about, for whatever it is worth, there seems to be a welcoming for this. By all news reports, there seem to be people going on the street and demonstrating in support of this coup, which just doesn't fit into the classical mode that ECOWAS is pursuing, which is democracy, votes, and then we shall know the leader. So, what Mr. The gentleman, the Prime Minister, as he's been named, Ali Mahaman Lamine Zaine now, I don't know. Quite frankly, I'm a bit confused by the whole thing now. Because, okay, take it from the point of view of ECOWAS was reading the Riot Act to the coupists, you must reinstate, Mr. Bazoum. Take it from that point of view. And how optimistic are you that we can get to a mutually satisfying position between ECOWAS on the one hand and the people who own their own country and who have decided that this is the way they want to go, which we are saying that, guys, no, we're all Democrats here. You can't go that way if you're a Democrat.
You see, Yori, in the case of the ousted Bazoum, whether or not it's going to be replaced or whether or not it's going to be in place, rather, is not going to be up to the ECOWAS, and it should be, though. But unfortunately, since the major powers have actually entered into the fray, what is going to happen to Bazoum is going to be pretty much dependent on what either France does or the United States does, because they both have interest. And to some extent, Iran and some other powers like that. That is one component. Let me also now go to what my brother said about strategic interest. You see, Nigeria is never going to have a futuristic, result-oriented, all-encompassing and cohesive strategic interests if you have different power centers within the country not agreeing to what should be our strategic interest. And this has actually been shown in the way some elements within Nigeria and saying, please don't touch Niger Republic. Whatever happens, these are our brothers and sisters. Yes, we all agree they are your brothers and sisters. But what should be the place of Nigeria in this whole thing, as far as that strategic interest is concerned? Nigeria should have a holistic strategic interest that is actually domesticated and functional to Nigerians alone. But when you have all these tendencies saying that the president should do this, the president should not do this, to me, the strategic interest is not going to happen at the end of the day. And that is one of the reasons why Nigeria's foreign policy has been very inefficient, very woolly, and hasn't even done so much to our own so-called strategic interest. So we have to really understand that. And this actually goes back to what I said as to who is actually truly a Nigerian. Where does loyalty lies in terms of what we are now seeing in the Niger coup? You see, to me...
Well, sorry, Femi. Let me bring in Mr. Mohammed. Mr. Mohammed is in Minna, Niger State. Good morning to you, Mr. Mohammed.
Good morning.
Please go ahead. Mr. Mohammed, you're on. Please go ahead.
Okay, my own here is, why the Mr. President, after the coup, was like issuing threat to Niger, the coup leader, as a president of ECOWAS? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Why will he issue a threat to them? At least as an ECOWAS president, also to advise, okay, at this era, it's not a coup era. Can you get me?
Yes, we can hear you. Is that it, Mr. Mohammed? Why? I think your main question is, why did they include the ultimate sanction, early, I guess? That's what you're saying. Let me bring that point to Ahmed Sajo. Well, there have been many criticisms of, or shall we say, commentaries on how it all went down until now. We have heard experts say that they would have wished that we hadn't put all of our ECOWAS cards on the table at once for people to have a view of them. And I think that's the kind of thing that Mohammed, who called out of Niger State, was saying. How do you see it? The matter that they knew that there is the question of the ultimate sanction of force. People have commented that even if that were there, it might not have been put on the table at the time it was put on the table. What do you think?
Yeah, I think those who are saying this are of the school of thought that says, when you want to negotiate, do not begin with a threat. When you begin with a threat, you create difficulties in negotiations. I think a lot of people hold this as very germane in matters of this nature. But I want to put it very clear that, we have already said, and I listened to the spokesman of the president on Al Jazeera, and he was very clear that diplomacy and negotiation are the key that we're going to use to resolve the impasse, but that no any other option has also been taken off the table. And I agree that when you are negotiating, all options should be on table so that you can at least, the other side knows that these are all the capabilities and these are the options in your hands. But again, some of these options are going to be very difficult, and I said they are going to be very difficult to impose because we're sitting down in ECOWAS with about 3 or so military heads of state sitting down there. And anything you say about the tyranny of a military regime affects them directly. And that is why they are rallying round and saying, look, anything that happens to our brother, we are part of it. Because ECOWAS had allowed a coup d'etat to take place in 1, 2, or 3 places within the ECOWAS countries, and nothing was done to say, look, reverse it. So we're reversing it at the 4th or so grade, and now we're, that has also weakened the resolve of the ECOWAS. The only difference in this case, like I said, is that the leader of ECOWAS as of today is a pro-democracy activist, is a believer in constitutional order, in governance, and is somebody who is ready to go the whole hog to defend democracy. And that is just why we're seeing a difference. But there was an ECOWAS leadership, and then the military took over in Mali, the military took over in Burkina Faso, the military took over in, I think, Guinea, and nothing happened. So ECOWAS is like playing a double standard at this point, from the point of view of those who watched ECOWAS look the other way around when coups took place in other ECOWAS nations. But be that as it may, I agree totally with my brother here, sitting next to me, that we must begin to break down the conversation to the real issues. What are the real issues? The real issues are not about an individual, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu trying to impose himself on Niger or on ECOWAS. It's about ECOWAS as a sub-regional group coming together to say, look, this is what we want to happen, and that as our leader, you must push this forward. But we are also saying that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the leader of ECOWAS, yes, but he is first and foremost the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria before becoming the leader of ECOWAS. And so his major concern should always, at all times, be the strategic interests of Nigeria first. And it's not difficult to define our strategic interests. We've always defined our strategic interests. In any case, if you knew the history of the Nigerian Civil War, it was on the same basis. When France, did not want to support the Nigeria's unity at that point in time, they sent emissaries. The people of Niger said, look, these are our brothers. We would not allow any harm to come to them. And they stood by us. So this concept of nations standing by nations on the basis of some kind of affiliations is not starting today. And it's not only happening between Nigeria and Niger. It has happened between countries all over the world. So we are saying, look, let us look at all the options very clearly. Let us put them on table, and let us look at the ones that serve the interests of the people of Nigeria, the interests of the people of Niger, and the interests of the people of the other countries within the West African sub-region, regional grouping, which is ECOWAS. That is all we are asking for. Diplomacy should serve the interests of the people.
Well, okay.
Strategic engagement should serve the interests of the people.
I'm not even sure you can hear me, actually. I'm not even sure if Abuja studio can still hear us. I don't know. Well, I think all that is left now, because Mr. Ahmed Sajo, unintentionally has used up all the time. I tried to butt in, but somehow he couldn't have been hearing me. But this is the time to now thank both gentlemen, Ahmed Sajo, former Commissioner for Information in Adamawa State, and indeed Mr. Femi Odere, journalist and political affairs analyst, and he even worked with Governor Fayemi as his diaspora person in the time. So thank you very much, Mr. Femi Odere and Mr. Ahmed Sajo, for being with us this morning. That's our program today. By tomorrow, we'll be able to know, following the meetings of the head of government that are going to be meeting today in Abuja, where exactly we are. Indeed, it won't even be tomorrow. As the day progresses, TVC News will be all over it, and you'll be getting a per second account. I'm Yori Falani. Bye-bye for now.